So I don't think I've ever seen system requirements for a game go as viral as with the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 system requirements that they've released a couple of months back. Or at least maybe not since Crysis. Because these system requirements are absolutely insane. Just look at them. It says you need at least an i7-9800X, an RTX 2080, 32 gigs of RAM, which is pretty much more than pretty much any gaming PC has anyway, because most have 16 gigs as standard, 150 gigabytes of SSD space, which is definitely giving even Call of Duty Modern Warfare a run for its money, and even a really good internet connection. What is this game? And probably the biggest surprises for many people are exactly how big the game is, how much RAM it takes up, and also how much bandwidth it takes up, but there are good reasons for all of it. The storage is kind of obvious, the game's just huge and you can fly literally anywhere in the world. So of course all the data needs to be stored somewhere, and a good SSD will also prevent pop-in, because it takes less time for textures to just load in. Because with an SSD, all those textures can be transferred elsewhere much faster. And then the RAM is of course required to store all that data, all those textures, all those game files that are needed, because you'll be flying over, you know, giant recreations of place on Earth, so of course that's a lot of data that needs to be stored somewhere fast. So of course 32 gigabytes of RAM is almost not surprising, but the bandwidth is very interesting because it's pretty much a necessary evil. The game is so big that you literally wouldn't be able to store it all on your PC. So all that extra data needs to be just downloaded when it's needed, because otherwise the download could be, I don't know, maybe even a terabyte upwards. And thankfully getting at least 50 megabits per second internet isn't that hard nowadays, so for most people it should be fine. So I'll be running it on my personal PC, which pretty much falls in line with the ideal specs, so we can definitely push it and see what kind of performance we get. In this PC, I'm rocking a Ryzen 3700X, so an 8-core CPU, and a pretty decent step up from the 2700X Pro that they recommend. I'm running a GTX 1080 Ti, which performance-wise is along the same lines as the 2080, with the added benefit of having 3 more gigs of VRAM, which is always gonna come in useful. I'm running 32 gigabytes of RAM as recommended. The whole game is being loaded onto a PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD, and also a 320 megabit per second internet connection. And also what's good is that I didn't even need 150 gigs of space. Yes, I needed to clear out quite a bit of space, but the whole file ended up being just around 100 gigabytes. Oh, only. Okay, maybe it's not only, but it's still way less than we expected, which is always nice. But even a Rainbow Six Siege folder is bigger, so that's something. So for settings wise, we are cranking up to the max. Pretty much everything is at max, at 4K, and pretty much everything's about VSync is off because, let's be honest, we probably won't be even reaching 60 FPS. And so let's see what kind of performance we're getting in what is pretty much what I believe will become the pretty much modern equivalent of Crysis. So let's probably go with, my hometown, because why not? Should be somewhere here. Where's our airport? There it is. Cool. Set departure. Let's fly. I did already teach myself how to fly. It took me like half an hour just to take off and not crash. It's actually insane. I've been like waiting here for like what, almost a minute? It is on PCIe Gen 4 NVMe again, and it's still taking forever to even load. Ooh, okay, we're already on a 20 FPS. Ooh, okay, let's just take off and see if the FPS improves. Like, I never met a game where you have to do this whole ritual just to get in the air. Like in most, you know, games where you get to fly, all you do is just press WASD and you're good. You have to do so much just to get your plane up and in the air and not crashing. And we're running at 26 FPS pretty much locked, even though, yeah, we aren't even moving from dirt past 26 FPS. I mean, at least it's a cinematic with that kind of frame rate. Isn't that what like all big developers say when their game doesn't run well? They just say it's cinematic. But at least in a bigger picture, just look at this, and I should probably pay attention so you don't crash. But look how little you see that even relies on having a high frame rate. Granted, when you like your propeller's moving fast enough that you can't really even see it like lag behind. Like the only place you can kind of see it is in your wings, but again, it kind of just like almost looks nice that way. It looks like cinematic, but like that actually, yeah, it's running way worse than I imagined. On a 1080 Ti Ryzen 3700X, and we're getting 27 FPS. When I said this is going to be a Crysis of this generation, I think I wasn't wrong. This is atrocious frame rates for this kind of PC. But come on, look how beautiful this game looks. I should be actually, which way am I going? First thing I want to check is, what if it happens if we just lower the resolution? So we're now running at 1440p. Yes, apply. I want to see exactly how much difference it makes. Ooh, no, what happened? What happened? You oversteered, that's great. Look at this, we aren't performing much better in 1440p. So this is still max settings, but we are running at 10 FPS more or less. We're currently running at 34, 36 FPS, which for 4K, not 4K, for 1440p, with this kind of PC is insanely low. Let me just get a quick, let me just get a good altitude so you can see this. Like, granted, look at this. When I, ooh boy, I'm oversteering by, oh, there we go. Like, when I, like, move my rings around and just move the plane around, it is clearly a tad smoother. But, like, honestly, apart from that, I mean, granted, it looks way more pixelated because we're, you know, running 1440p at a 4K monitor, but still, I mean, like, I honestly don't think that the better FPS would make a difference. So overall then, yes, this game is ridiculously hard to run, as we all expected. However, just because the FPS is low doesn't mean you're getting a bad experience. As you saw, even at like, what, 20 to 30 FPS, it looked and felt decent, because unlike with some like high action game, you don't have too many elements here that, you know, clearly appear really like jagged and laggy because of the lower frame rate, because you're in the air. Like, the only thing that really suffers is like your wing animation. That's really it. Your propellers turn way too fast to be like noticeable. It's just really not an issue. Even though this game is, you know, so hard to run, the overall textures, sure, it may look breathtaking, but even like semi-close up, even in that like starting sequence when you're just like being shown your airport, it is still quite a bit pixelated, because let's be honest, all we're doing here is running in a slightly improved version of Google Maps, and we're just flying around in that. Granted, it looks slightly better in Google Maps, but you can only get that kind of, you know, 3D satellite rendering of everything looking so good. But hey, if you're like high enough in the air not to kind of notice those details, then maybe that won't even be a problem. It's always a fun experience, and you always get to see if your PC gets to run Microsoft Flight Simulator. And yes, I am trying to make it a thing. Yes, I think it's a new Crysis. Get off my lawn. But anyway, before I go back to flying over my crush's house, let me tell you about my Patreon, which is going to be down in the video description below. Because even $1 a month goes a long way in helping me make way better views and also videos on way more interesting topics. Yes, it's that amazing. Down there you will find a link to my Discord if you want to talk to me about this or whatever else really. And I guess that's really it, so I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did, subscribe, like, whatever, and I'll see you all in what I make next. Goodbye everyone, goodbye.